Good Monday afternoon to you. Hope your week's off to a great start. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. A little later in the show, Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter, will join us, talking plenty of Browns as they get ready for their first AFC North game. They host the Steelers Sunday at 1 o'clock over at First Energy Stadium. Out in Berea, some good news. Nick Chubb practicing. Jedrick Wills practicing. Jack Conklin practicing. Odell Beckham Jr. practicing today. Some bad news: Baker Mayfield not practicing, John Johnson not practicing, David Njoku, Jarvis Landry, Malik Jackson, J.C. Tretter, all not practicing. Kevin Stefanski talked about Baker Mayfield and if he thought he would be good to go against the Steelers on Sunday.
I would probably be speaking out of turn if I spoke, to that. I think that's really a medical type of thing. I would just tell you I'm listening to all the people that have the degrees, and we'll go with what they tell us.
You want to know your starting quarterback by Wednesday, or would you take it all the way throughout the week?
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, Tony, how it's going to play out, but I'm not in the prediction business.
But you know whether you want to go through Wednesday with the guys.
There's a lot of things I want, No, I mean.
That's what I asked.
Yeah. I think we just got to work through all of it. It's and the quarterback position really is no different than some of these other positions where guys' availability you might not know Wednesday, you might not know Friday.
Let's welcome in Dan Lobby, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Dan, you saw Kevin Stefanski aptly dodging the question of will Baker Mayfield start. Knowing what we have learned, how tough is it going to be to see Baker Mayfield out there under center against Pittsburgh Steelers?
I think it's very telling that he wasn't at practice on Monday. This is a guy that does not really miss practice. Even when this injury first happened, he was out there, he was practicing. He took all the first team reps on Tuesday last week, the one practice they had when Case Keenum ended up starting. So I think it's concerning that he's not out there to start the week. And I think Kevin Stefanski right now wants to leave that door open. Maybe it's partially out of respect for Baker to kind of see how he feels. But I think it's going to be really difficult, especially if we get out there on Wednesday and he's not on the field. It's going to be really difficult to look at this situation and say that Baker Mayfield is going to start against the Steelers.
How different do you think the offense looks with Case Keenum? I've said all along, I think Case Keenum is a guy you can win with. There are some things that he does that Baker does that he can't do. That's the only way to put it, and that's not being disrespectful to Case Keenum.
Right, Case is not going to be as aggressive as Baker, and you don't want him to be as aggressive because that's when you get into some of those Case Keenum mistakes and some of the reasons why he's not a starting quarterback in this league, even after he led a team to an NFC championship game. Case Keenum is kind of best in small doses, I guess, to put it one way. But he knows how to run the offense. He knows what his job is. Again, he's maybe not going to take those big chances that Baker Mayfield will take and those shots down the field, but you can be relatively efficient with Case Keenum. Again, it's not even going to be as efficient as it was with Baker Mayfield before the injury, but at least he can go out there and get everybody lined up, get through the process, find the open receivers. He can do the things you need to do.
He's a guy that if he is getting the ball out on time, it's usually a good thing. Does the offense look different? Does Kevin Stefanski call a different game, do you think, if Case Keenum is the quarterback?
I think he does. I think, Baker is so good on the run and he's so good on rollouts and throwing on the run, throwing on the move. I think Kevin has to call the game a little bit differently with Case, who can move around a little bit as well. But, we saw a lot of tight end screens, and I know the Browns have used that a fair amount this year, but I think we saw more of that on Thursday night than we have really this season. Yeah, I think they're going to rely on the run game a little bit more, and they obviously rely heavily on it. But there's games where they kind of come out looking to throw the football, and I don't know if that's going to be the case as much with Case Keenum as the quarterback. So I do think you have to call the game a little bit more because, even if Baker is struggling, you're still willing to put the ball in his hands and let him make a play in moments. And you're not going to be as willing to do that with Case.
Well, we touched on it. Jack Conklin back on the practice field. That's certainly a good sign. And as we take a look out in Berea, Jack Conklin going through drills, and a welcome sign for Kevin Stefanski as well as anybody that would be carrying the football. The other thing that was good was that Jedrick Wills was also back on the field. And you get both of those guys back, and you know, you feel good because that offensive line that is among the, if not the best in football, is back at full strength.
Yeah, you want to have all five.
Thursday night football was a great experience.
Everybody always talks about that offensive line works together like a glove. And when you have all five of the guys that you're used to, that you really know, that really know each other so well, that have played together now for nearly a season and a half at this point, it's nothing but a good thing when you can have all those guys. And Jack Conklin is one of the best offensive linemen in the league. You can make the argument that it's either him or Joel Bitonio is the best offensive lineman on this team. So to have him back is a really huge step for this team. And then I mean, when you throw Jed Wills in on the other side, you can sort of have that offensive line that you envision going into the season.
Well, and you know, Jedrick Wills met with the media today, talked about how he's feeling and where it's going this week for Jedrick Wills.
It was good. Thursday night football was a great experience. The crowd was electric, and you know, it felt good to actually play again. Feeling better, just trying to work on some fundamentals this week, get back to 100%.
What percentage would you say you're at now?
It's hard to tell because that was my first game in like 3 weeks, so my body, I'm feeling it everywhere right now. But I'm gonna try to like get some treatment every day this week along with practice, and hopefully, you know what I'm saying, get back to normal.
And Dan, he kind of alluded to the same thing Kevin Stefanski had talked about, where it was one injury and then he came back, and then there were a couple other minor ones that kind of piled up on him. The one thing we've learned, Jedrick Wills at less than 100% at left tackle is pretty good and better than the alternative for the Browns.
Right, and look, credit to Blake Hance, who's been available and done a serviceable job in place of Wills. But you drafted Jedrick Wills number 10 overall for a reason, because you believe he can be a long-time starting left tackle in this league. And I was excited to see what Wills could do in year two. I think there was a lot of room for improvement, and I think he was ready to kind of take that step into his second season. We just haven't gotten to see that. Just a string of bad luck, right? He keeps fighting through these injuries, fighting through things, playing next to Joel Bitonio and J.C. Tretter, who just never missed snaps. And he just could not stay on the field. Guys would land on it, or something crazy would happen in the game, and he'd have to leave. So to get him out there on Thursday night, to get him through a football game was a big step. And now you get this 10-day break between games, and he should be ready to go against Pittsburgh. And the good thing is that's a team he should be pretty familiar with because they're a division opponent.
And the other thing is you want Jedrick Wills and you want Jack Conklin because T.J. Watt's on the other side of the football, and you want, you know, all hands on deck, because if you slow down T.J. Watt, by and large that Steelers defense is not nearly as intimidating as if T.J. Watt gets rolling.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy on that front that can change a game. And we saw it against Seattle in that game that Pittsburgh played against the Seahawks. It was, you know, beating the Seahawks with Geno Smith and going, you know, scoring not very many points against really what is a bad Seahawks defense. You don't write home about that win, but you win that game because T.J. Watt makes a play for you in overtime to get you the football back. And those are the types of things. This Browns team should be able to beat the Steelers. They are a better football team than the Steelers. But it's when T.J. Watt steps in and starts making plays and makes a game-changing play or two, that's when the Steelers can come into Cleveland and pull an upset.
Yeah, without question. Dan Lobby, Browns beat reporter for cleveland.com, and the Plain Dealer and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will continue to talk Browns as they get ready for the Steelers. Kevin Stefanski talked about how they self-scouted and what came out of that. That's straight ahead. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. And back to too much caffeine and too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns with Dan Lobby from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. Keyshawn Johnson was on ESPN's KJM this morning talking about paying Baker Mayfield. Here's Keyshawn Johnson.
Pretty easy to replace Baker Mayfield because I can go get a Marcus Mariota, for instance, and put him in there, or Kirk Cousins. If I want to revisit that, and I've coached Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, if I'm Kevin Stefanski, Kirk Cousins has another 3 years left in him.
Yeah.
I like Kirk Cousins. We can do the same things with less money tied up with Kirk Cousins as we could Baker Mayfield. So Baker Mayfield and his representatives got to be smart enough to know I'm in a good space here. I can't get my ego caught up because Josh Allen's getting 250. Lamar is all of a sudden getting ready to get 375 with 300 fully guaranteed due in one day. It doesn't work like that.
Dan, I don't think I've ever heard Baker Mayfield or any of his representatives say that he should be paid like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. And I certainly wouldn't bring in Marcus Mariota to run this offense. Those are my initial reactions to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's like two kind of points there, right? The first is, and I think we've talked about this before, if you're going to move on from Baker Mayfield, what's plan B? And if it's Marcus Mariota, that's, as much as I liked him coming out of Oregon, that's not really a great plan B. There's something to be said, as we've talked about over and over again, about a guy knowing your system, being in your system, understanding your expectations, and a coach knowing how to coach you. I think that matters. And when you change over again and again and again, you lose some of that. So that's part of it. But yeah, you're right. When Josh Allen signed his big extension, Baker Mayfield congratulated him, said he was happy for him, and didn't really entertain many questions about what he was looking for monetarily. Would he love a Josh Allen extension? Would he love whatever Lamar Jackson's extension is going to look like? Sure. I mean, he's human. Everybody wants that. But, if the Browns kind of look at this situation, and this is a very tricky situation now with the shoulder injury, and you might go into year 5 not knowing 100% what you have in Baker Mayfield. If that lands somewhere in the $30 to $35 million range, that's not a bad deal for Baker either.
No, and you know what? That's probably not a bad deal for the Browns either. So here's something from Dan Graziano, ESPN, and it was, reaction over reaction is the deal. Browns would pay Baker Mayfield in the mid-30s to stick around, and that's what his thought was. It is an overreaction because the statement was Baker Mayfield would not get an extension. So the mid to high 30 millions per year as an extension for Baker Mayfield seems pretty reasonable. Keep in mind the salary cap's going to continue to go up because the TV money is going to be floated in. That would end up probably being a pretty reasonable contract for a starting quarterback that you value as a franchise quarterback if you're talking in the mid to upper 30 millions a year, multiple years.
Yeah, I mean, the going rate for a franchise quarterback, an elite level, when you're talking Aaron Rodgers or, when Deshaun Watson extended with Houston, we mentioned Josh Allen, what Lamar Jackson's going to get, Dak Prescott, you're looking at that 40 plus range. So if you pay a guy 30 to 35 million, that is sort of that Kirk Cousins zone, right? He got that guaranteed money. And for Baker, if he wants to approach this in a different way, if he wanted to take a shorter term contract, let's say that Kirk Cousins, now it's since been restructured, but he signed basically got every dollar of that initial contract with Minnesota guaranteed. So if Baker wanted to take that approach, a shorter deal, and then 3 years down the road or whatever it is, say, okay, I've proven to you now that I'm worth $40 million a year, he might want to take that approach. I think there's a lot of different ways the Browns can do this. There's a lot of different ways Baker and his people can do this. And this should be an organization that's not afraid to get creative.
Yeah, and the other thing is I don't think the injury factors into their decision. I think they want to extend him. I think Baker wants to be here. I think Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski want him here. I think it's just a matter of they got to come up with the number that both sides can live with. Is that kind of the sense that you get from it?
Yeah, I think people are happy with what they've seen from Baker Mayfield. But again, because of the shoulder, what you really would have loved to have seen was just a full season of, like, maybe not at the level that we saw in the back half of last year. That's a really high level, top 5 level of play, but just a consistent season, game to game. This is exactly who Baker Mayfield is. And you're not going to get that now because of this injury. But the injury doesn't prevent you from signing him to an extension because it's something that's repairable. It's something that he should be able to overcome. It's not going to linger or cause problems down the road. So in that sense, I don't think the injury means a whole lot. And the other thing too, if you sign him to an extension, he kind of becomes, in that Moneyball world and in that NBA style of thinking, he sort of becomes an asset too. So even if it doesn't work out, look what the Rams did with Jared Goff. Look what the Eagles did with Carson Wentz. That's not what you want to have happen, but if for some reason you sign him to an extension and he ends up not being the guy, you can kind of flip that for, I don't know, another veteran quarterback, some assets down the road, things like that. So there's a lot of reasons to extend him. The first being, I think he should be your quarterback for a long time.
So Kevin Stefanski talked about the mini bye, as you refer to it, with the 10 days off, and that the Browns were going to do what they did last year at the bye. If you remember last year at the bye, they kind of self-scouted themselves. That's when the offense really took off. Here is what Kevin Stefanski said they did with this time off in that quote-unquote mini bye.
Jeff, we found a lot that we can correct. I think we identified some things as a team, as a unit, individually, things that we want to do better. And we talked about that this morning as a team, and then we made sure this practice was indicative of some of those areas that we want to get better.
And Dan, I would think most of those are likely on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, I think they probably sat down with Joe Woods and his staff and kind of figure out how to fix some of the miscommunications. And they did do better against Denver in that regard. I think Johnson's interception was a prime example of a guy who maybe started to cheat up a little bit and then played back, and maybe he was trying to bait Teddy Bridgewater into that throw. And it worked. He came away with an interception. So some of those discipline issues, communication issues, kind of getting those worked out. This was a really important spot for this because they don't have their bye until after they play Baltimore the first time. They're still 5 games away from their true bye week, and those games are going to feel long here as they kind of push through the month of November and get through that Thanksgiving weekend. So having this here where players were able to kind of scatter, have the weekend off. Johnson, for example, went to LA. Some other guys went back to their home states for a couple of days to kind of get that mental and physical break, I think is really important for this roster and then this coaching staff and allowing them to kind of assess things. Yeah,
I would agree, and these next 4 or 5 weeks will go a long way to determining, exactly how the season plays out. This is a critical portion of the schedule. Pro Football Focus has the highest graded Browns through 7 games, and when you look at it, all on the offensive and defensive lines, and all pretty high as far as that elite level. You got a couple on the defensive line and then 3 on the offensive line. That's usually a sign that your football team is going to win a lot of games. So the highest grade is where you want it at this point. You want the guys in the trenches being graded out highly.
Yeah, building on both sides of the lines. Miles and seeing Clowney on that list is really encouraging because that means that he's having the type of year you signed him to come in and have. And there were questions about injuries and obviously missed a game when that knee flared up in Los Angeles. But seeing him be a difference maker and there was a sack that Myles Garrett had on Thursday night where him and Clowney came in at different levels and they ended up splitting the sack. So it just speaks to Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller having great years. Myles Garrett having a defensive player of the year type of year. Not just kind of sitting on that 4.5 sack game, but continuing to stack games on top of each other. It's really encouraging to see these guys in the trenches getting these high grades, because that's really sort of how the Browns built this thing.
When you look at the Steelers, Roethlisberger is he's not the quarterback that he was a couple of years ago. The guys that have given the Browns trouble, Mahomes, really athletic, Herbert, the big arm and can run a little bit, and Murray, just ultra athletic. What do you think the challenges are specifically for the Browns defense as they get ready for Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers?
This is actually really a game where the Browns have to be disciplined in the second level, because when you watch Ben Roethlisberger, it seems like every ball that he throws is essentially a jump ball. So, you can't get over eager. You can't let guys run free. You can't make easy throws for him. You should be able to contest most of the passes that he throws. And as long as you're disciplined, this Steelers offense is not going to put up a lot of points. And I'm really curious to see now what Myles Garrett, what Jadeveon Clowney, what those guys in the middle can do against a kind of shaky Steelers offensive line. They haven't necessarily been what the Steelers hoped they could be. I want to see those guys get after Big Ben, because he can't really move a whole lot. And this should be an opportunity for Myles, Jadeveon, even Tack McKinley, and then those interior guys to maybe rack up some sack numbers.
Dan Lobby, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we continue to talk Browns as they get ready for the Steelers. Kevin Stefanski talks a little bit about Nick Chubb, and we'll look ahead to what the offense might look like against the Steelers. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Dan Lobby and I continue talking Browns, getting ready to face the Steelers. 1 o'clock Sunday at First Energy Stadium. Colin Cowherd, FS1's The Herd, talks about the value of Baker Mayfield.
Both Case Keenum and Baker Mayfield are good enough to get to the playoffs with this team, and neither's good enough to win a Super Bowl. Now, don't confuse value and talent. Baker's more talented. He's got a better arm. He's more talented. But the gap's not huge. Vegas is telling you that. The line doesn't swing radically when Baker's out and Case is in. The numbers show you there's not a big gap. They were better in many, many offensive categories last night. But we know Baker's better, and he is better. But the truth is, he's not that valuable, and neither is Case. Case Keenum went 11-3 one year when he had a good supporting cast. That's better than Baker's ever done. But Baker is better. The point is, this organization going forward, this dysfunctional organization has two things they got to pay whatever it takes to keep intact. Kevin Stefanski, do not let him go. He calls as good a game outside of maybe a Sean Payton or an Andy Reid or a Sean McVay in this league. He is fantastic play caller, and this offensive line is stacked, and it's perfect. It's got guys in its 20s. It's got the centers in his 30s. Got a couple guys. It's perfect. There's no reason this offensive line cannot be dominant for another 3 or 4 years. But we talk about Baker all the time. He's just not that valuable here.
Dan Lobby, don't know that I agree with Colin Cowherd, but that's not anything that out of the ordinary. Didn't Baker win 11 games last year, 11-5? So, I mean, 11-3, 11-5. That's okay. Be that as it may. I think the Browns can win with Case Keenum as the quarterback. Can they win the Super Bowl? I don't know. Can any team necessarily? Are you going to tell me Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs right now look like a Super Bowl team?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a handful of guys, right? I mean, it's a really small group of guys that you look at and say, if you have that quarterback, you can go win the Super Bowl this year, and the supporting cast isn't as important. Now, it's always somewhat important, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys. Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys. I mean, everybody kind of knows the lists off the top of their head. Josh Allen is trying to be one of those guys. Lamar Jackson trying to be one of those guys. But it's a really small list. But when you have a quarterback you can trust and one you can build around, you kind of ride with it. Now, I think Colin is right in the fact that the Browns should continue to invest in this offensive line. And I know there's only so much money to go around, but I do think it's important to protect Baker Mayfield. And then we've seen that when the offensive line has been shaky, he has struggled. And I do think there's something to the fact that you want to continue to surround him with as much talent as you possibly can afford. But, Case Keenum kind of is who he is. And let's not forget that back in 2017, the Vikings had the best defense in football. Go back and look at those rankings, whether it's DVOA, just plain rankings, and look where the Vikings were. Baker Mayfield can give you more than Case Keenum can. And I think if you continue to develop and grow with him and kind of keep the pieces in place around him, you absolutely can go win big with him. And you don't necessarily have to have the best defense in football on the other side to do it.
Yes, I agree. Having said that, Case Keenum's the perfect backup quarterback for the situation. He can win games for you. I mean, he's not going to do it single-handedly, but you can win football games with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's the type of backup quarterback that you want to have. A veteran, a guy who's, going to show up and help your starter, but also when his number is called, he's going to go out and win you a game like he did against Denver. And, is he going to, I mean, look, that was a lot of Dearness Johnson, right? That was a lot of the defense, but Case Keenum did what he needed to do in that football game. You can count on him to be prepared. He's not going to be lost. I mean, just look around the league and look at other teams that have had to play backups. I mean, it could be Geno Smith, Geno's a veteran guy, and he's been around, but I think you'd rather have Case Keenum than Geno Smith starting for you if you're trying to make the playoffs. So the Browns have a very good situation with Case Keenum as their backup.
Well, the other thing Kevin Stefanski talked about, Nick Chubb able to work out and looking like he's going to be available Sunday against the Steelers. Here's Kevin Stefanski today about Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys know Nick. He's gotten a lot of work done these last couple weeks. He's feeling good. He's continuing to get rehab, and I think he's excited to get back out there, and we'll see how it goes over the next couple days and see if he can.
And I know Dearness Johnson played really well, but if you can get Nick Chubb back, that goes a long way to helping out, Case Keenum if he has to play quarterback against the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, this offense is really built around Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Jarvis Landry. I mean, those three guys are really what this offense is built around. When those three guys are healthy, they're going to thrive. You got Landry back on Thursday night. Chubb should be back this Sunday. Them not putting him on IR initially kind of tells you all you needed to know, and now he's back at practice. And it's just the explosive plays in this offense come on the ground, and they usually come when Nick Chubb has the football. He's one of those rare backs that can literally, and we've seen it going back to his rookie year in Atlanta and that game in Oakland that year too. He can score from anywhere on the football field. And the Browns just don't really have that in their passing game right now. So they need Nick Chubb and that big playability back. And the nice thing is you kind of found something in Dearness Johnson. You knew he was good, but then what he did Thursday night was really incredible. And so now you have a guy that you can kind of get by now with Kareem Hunt still sidelined. As long as Nick Chubb is back as your primary runner, you should be able to do what you want to do offensively.
So do you think with if it is in fact Case Keenum, and we don't know for a fact yet, do they run the ball even more than they have? Do they lean on the run even a little bit more? It seems kind of silly to say that because they lean on the run quite a bit.
I think they will. And I also think, with Jarvis kind of getting healthier, I think that opens up kind of a pseudo run game a little bit where you can use some of that short, quick stuff to Jarvis to kind of serve almost like run plays. Maybe Demetric Felton gets a little more involved as a wide receiver, and you can use some short, quick stuff to him as well, just to loosen up that defense so they can't just stick 8 or 9 guys in the box and make it almost impossible even for Nick Chubb to run the football. But yeah, I think they're going to lean on the run game because you almost have to. You don't want to ask Case Keenum to have to go out there and make throw after throw after throw. You want him to make throws when he has to, but you don't want to rely on him to throw the football 30, 40 times. When you've got a guy like Nick Chubb, you've got Dearness Johnson, you've got Demetric Felton and Jarvis Landry, you should be able to cobble together either a run game or using those guys in the passing games, whether it's screens, quick stuff, to sort of simulate a run game.
Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, Dan Labbe, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out on the other side of the break. We'll turn our attention to the Steelers game and the AFC North. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Welcome back to Sports for CLE. Dan Labbe and I continue talking Browns, getting ready for the Steelers. Grady Williams talked about preparing for the Steelers as well as fixing some of those defensive breakdowns that the Browns have had.
You just see it as the next game, and you see it that way, you'll get far in this league. So, just taking it game by game, keeping us on task. Yeah, we working through it every day. We try to shorten the game plan and make it as simple for us as possible. And we did a great job, narrowing the game plan for us to play faster.
Dan, the AFC North just appears to be wide open. Browns haven't played a divisional game yet. That's how backloaded all the AFC North games are for the Browns. Do you kind of sense that this, it wouldn't surprise me if any of the 4 of these teams end up winning the division.
Yeah, I think it's wide open. Again, I don't think Pittsburgh is necessarily in play, but you just never know with Mike Tomlin and if they get that run game figured out, what could happen and what those other teams might do. But yeah, between Baltimore, Cleveland, and now Cincinnati, it's kind of like anybody can win this thing. And, you kind of have to read between the lines a little bit with Kevin Stefanski, but he has said multiple times, either to us or, in other interviews I've seen with him, that he's pointed out that they're playing their first division game this Sunday and that they have a lot of division games, all their division games coming up between now and the end of the season. So I think he's making this a point of emphasis, and he understands that this is kind of when the real season starts. You play your division, and if you take care of business against the Bengals and the Steelers and the Ravens, you're going to be where you want to be at the end of the year. But the Browns are actually in a good position at 4-3. They're not that far behind. I think the Bengals winning on Sunday actually helped them a little bit because it kept that gap pretty close. And now they have an opportunity to go out there and almost win their way into an AFC North title. Yeah,
and to kind of illustrate your point, Jamison Hensley from ESPN tweets out the seedings as they would currently occur through 7 weeks for the AFC. And you see that the Browns are 1 game away from the top seed. The Bengals, it's Bengals, Raiders, Titans, but they play the Bengals twice. So Bengals are young and talented. We've talked about this pretty much all season long. Are you buying them pretty heavily after the way they played against the Ravens, or are you saying not quite yet? I mean, that game clearly meant more to the Bengals than it did the Ravens. They were already talking about it when they came in. And it looks like we froze Dan and lost Dan there for a minute. But again, Bengals 5-2, Raiders 5-2, Titans 5-2, Bills 4-2, Ravens 5-2, Chargers 4-2. Those are the 2-loss teams in the AFC. So there is 6 of them, and the Browns at 4-3 would have been the 7th seed. The point we were making was, the Bengals came off that win and were already looking forward to the chance to get the Ravens, and they went in there and kind of dominated them. So the Browns have the Steelers coming up this week, then they get the Bengals, then they have the Patriots, then they have the Lions, then they have the Ravens, then the bye week. So next 5 games, critically important for the Browns as they look towards that AFC and what might be in the AFC and the AFC North. All right, we're going to step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. We will continue to talk Browns as they get ready for the Steelers. 1 o'clock on Sunday over at First Energy Stadium. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. We continue talking Browns as they get ready to face the Pittsburgh Steelers, 1 o'clock, First Energy Stadium this Sunday. So Kevin Stefanski talked about Case Keenum's comment that Keenum felt he'd be more accurate in the second start. He wasn't happy with his accuracy in that first start Thursday against the Broncos. Said that he would be more accurate as the weeks went on, and he shook some of the rust off. Here's Kevin Stefanski about that comment from Case Keenum.
Yeah, I think any quarterback gets better, certainly with more opportunities. I think Thursday nights are really challenging because you don't get a ton of work during the week to work on timing and the precision in the pass game. So I guess I'm not surprised that you'd want to that he feels like he would get better with more time.
And again, Case Keenum is familiar with Kevin Stefanski's offense, and the Browns, I think the Browns can win with Kevin Stefanski. Not exactly sure how big they can win. I don't know that they can go to the Super Bowl, quote unquote, but Case Keenum knows the system and can do enough to win plenty of football games. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can read him on brownzone.com as well. Scott, and again, Kevin Stefanski won't rule Baker Mayfield out. If it is Case Keenum, how big can the Browns win?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dave. I mean, he went to the NFC Championship game with the Vikings, 3 or 4 years ago. So, I would hate to draw any restrictions. I think he could take this team a long way, but the odds are better if Baker Mayfield's your quarterback, right? I feel like Baker's a better player. He's got higher potential, better athlete, better arm strength. But if you played a certain type of game and your defense played well and you ran the ball well, there's no reason you couldn't win a bunch of games with Case Keenum, kind of like the Eagles did with Nick Foles that one year.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield allows you more room for error, I guess would be the way to put it. You're going to need multiple things to step up, and the pieces are there with Case Keenum at quarterback. But, I would agree. I think that's a really good way to put it. How big of a deal is it for the Browns to get Jarvis Landry back, and also for the possibility of having all 5 of those offensive linemen back for the first time in a while as well?
Yeah, both of those are huge. I think we saw the importance of Jarvis when he wasn't out there for those 4 games. Not that we didn't know how important he was or how good he was, but there felt like something was really missing from that offense, and he's a big part of it. He's a reliable guy on third down. And then there's a bunch of intangibles. He brings energy. They say juice because he brings this juice to the whole team. He's a great blocker in the run game. So he brings a lot. So I think that's huge for him coming back. And then the offensive line, if you have all 5 guys, it allows you to do a lot more as an offense. And, especially when you're quote unquote weak at the tackle spots. And I think Blake Hansen's played fine, but when you had to go Blake Hansen and James Hudson III at your tackles, you just couldn't do the same things as an offense. You had to keep a running back or tight end in the chip, and you wouldn't have to do that as often with, Jed Wilth Jr. and Jack Conklin at the tackle spots, especially when you go against a Steelers front that is really good, right? You got to figure out a way to block TJ Watt, and then you got to figure out a way to block all those other guys that they have up front.
What do you think the offense, how does the offense look different, do you think, with Case Keenum as opposed to Baker Mayfield?
I think there's fewer shots down the field. Not that Baker's completing a lot of those, but they took some, or I think they took a decent amount, especially last year. They took a lot of shots down the field. And I think as you saw Odell Beckham Jr. continue to get into the flow of the offense, you're to see more shots. And you pair Odell with Anthony Schwartz, then you got 2 kind of speed guys on the outside. You can take more shots. And I just feel like Keenum's arm isn't as strong. I feel like he'd rather throw the ball underneath. It just feels kind of his, game management kind of style. So I think that's the first area where you would notice a difference. And then some of the broken plays that Baker is able to do. I know Keenum had that huge 4th down scramble the other night, but I think Baker's better in that area, more elusive, and you could do even some designed runs with Baker that you probably wouldn't do with Case.
Yeah, and I think to my way of thinking, I think Keenum wants to get the ball out on time and on target. It's not going to be held and trying to create as much. I think it's going to be okay. Nothing's there. Get rid of it. Get back and get on to the next play. I don't think there's going to be as much ad-libbing, I guess would be the way to put it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we saw that. It's 3-step drop and get out of your hand and make, first read, second read, then figure out what you want to do. That's probably safe to say. And that's why the offense will look a little differently. I don't think Kevin Stefanski calls the game a whole lot differently necessarily. But, we saw even on those 2 big sacks that Baker took in that Cardinals game, it's him trying to create something off schedule. And you can see great plays off of that, but you can also see sacks and turnovers, which you'll probably see fewer of each, I would think, with Keenum as quarterback.
Yeah, I think the key thing is as long as Case Keenum takes care of the football, the Browns can win with him at quarterback. All right, Greedy Williams has played pretty well. He talked about how he has played this year and kind of always being ready to go.
I feel like I'm doing what I was drafted here to do, and like you said, playing my best football, enjoying the game, and just being who I am.
How do you stay ready when you're not sure if you're going to be one of the starting guys over the week?
Watch film, come to meetings, be full participant in everything. I kind of do everything as far as like walkthroughs and stuff. I want to be the receiver just to make sure I'm getting the reps in and stuff like that. So, just being dialed in, knowing this a game of injuries, and, you could be up just like that. So.
Scott, how impressed have you been? I've been really impressed with the way he's played. I know he was banged up, and Greg Newsome came in and kind of won the cornerback spot opposite Denzel Ward, who's now dealing with an injury. But I think Greedy's played great.
Yeah, he has. And it was such a big question mark for me, right? Coming off the missed season with the shoulder, you did not know what to expect. And obviously, one of the reasons that they drafted Greg Newsome was a question mark for Greedy Williams, right? It was an insurance policy to some degree. I also think Andrew Berry wanted to upgrade the overall talent at corner. And you said, okay, well, if Greedy's your number 3 or number 4, depending on, Troy Hill and the nickel, that's really good for a defense. But Greedy's got to prove that he's capable of being in that number 4 role, and back to kind of being the guy that they took in the second round in 2019. And to me, he showed that. He showed that when Newsome went down. He played well in those couple of starts. He came in for Denzel in the 4th quarter against Denver. I just don't feel like there's a huge drop-off when he's in there and the other 2 guys aren't. I think there's some drop-off, but it's not big at all. And, there is a mindset change that is necessary when you go from being, a guy at LSU and even as a rookie, Greedy Williams was a starter. And now he has to be ready off the bench, ready to go in if a guy gets hurt, maybe take all the starting reps and then not know even if Denzel's going to play this weekend. So I think he's handled that kind of new role. I think he's handled really well.
How impressed have you been with Greg Newsome? I mean, that's the other part of this. He looks like a savvy vet the way he's been in coverage. You look at it and when they break down what he's doing, it's like, man, that's textbook coverage in some instances.
He seems to be in the right spot an awful lot. I don't think quarterbacks have attacked him like I thought they would. You see a rookie out there, it's like, go throw it him. And I don't know if that's because on film that he just shows it's not worth doing that. I don't know if it's because the Browns are giving him more help on that side, but they've not picked on him like I thought they would. And when they have, he's either held up or, he's gotten called for a couple interference or given up a play and then come right back and made a good play after that. And I think that's a great sign. So, as a first-round pick, you expect a lot, but you never know from a rookie, and he's number 26. It's not like he's a, top 5 pick. I think he's fit in really well.
The other thing to keep in mind with him is he's young. I mean, he is a young rookie. So he's, there's a lot of good football ahead of him, assuming he stays healthy. I'll knock on whatever I can knock on with that.
Well, yeah, and it's not – I think he's proven physically he can do it. He's fast enough. He's quick enough. Jumps well enough. And then I think he really impressed coaches and teammates with his attention to detail, his intelligence. It really showed up in training camp and in the preseason. And I talked to him just about learning the different techniques that change from college to pro. And he went in and he studied hard and he asked all kinds of questions from the veterans. And the teammates and coaches really appreciated how he was so willing to take on that and learn something new and master it. Like, he was committed to mastering it. And I think we've seen that early in his rookie year.
Scott Petrek, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also read him on brownszone.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we kind of turn our attention a little bit more towards the Steelers game coming up Sunday at 1. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Browns beat reporter Scott Petrek. Scott, all of the teams in the AFC have at least 2 losses. Browns sit at 4-3. As banged up and beat up as they are and have been, are they still kind of right where they need to be, do you think, as you look at how this could unfold?
Yeah, I do. Now, obviously, there's a big question mark considering quarterback. Baker Mayfield's health, right? That has to be figured out. But from a win-loss perspective, yeah, 1 game back. They play the teams in front of them twice, the Ravens and the Bengals. So, yeah, I think the Browns control their own destiny. It's just a matter of, can they get/stay healthy, and then can they do what they need to do, right? Because we thought going into the season that they're plenty talented enough to be one of the best teams, and that opinion hasn't changed. It's just, can the defense start to dominate? Can your front four pressure the quarterback? Can you do all the things that the reasons we were so high on them to begin with?
Yeah, and Kevin Stefanski talked about that. The AFC North looks every bit as strong as we thought it was. He talked about that division as well as the Steelers coming up.
It's unique. We have a very, very good division, and we knew that going into this season. So I think the guys are excited at the challenge of our first division opponent, and a really good team. They're excited for the opportunity this weekend.
And Scott, think about that. We're in week 8, and the Browns haven't played the Steelers, the Bengals, or the Ravens. So 6 of the remaining games are against teams that are really, really good, having pretty good years.
Yeah, it is highly unusual that it's so backloaded like that. I kind of like it, right? These games, everybody says, they count as 2. They're extremely important. You got to go. I don't think the Browns go to the playoffs unless they go 4-2 in the division. I know they don't win the division unless they go at least 4-2 in the division. So you kind of know what's in front of you. And I think it's interesting. I think some people thought the AFC North would be not as good this year. And it's been so good for so long. And we know the Browns have been in the bottom for so long. But nobody expected Cincinnati to be what it is. And there are a lot of people writing Pittsburgh off. I was not one of them, but a lot of people did write them off. And all of a sudden, you look at 4 teams that, Pittsburgh's only played 6 games, but 3-3 is the worst in the division. The Bengals are way better than people thought. They go in and have, what could be a signature win at Baltimore yesterday. So I think every time, Browns fans are like, okay, we can relax. The division's not going to be as hard. It's always going to be hard.
Yeah, and you know, the one thing is that Bengals core of offensive players is young. I mean, that's going to be – better get that defense ready because it's going to be interesting. So when you look at what the Browns have, they have the Steelers this week, then they go Bengals, Patriots, Lions, Ravens, then the bye, and then the Ravens again. That stretch is going to go a long way in determining whether this season is what the Browns want it to be or not. Do you agree?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, you almost look at the Lions as a must-win, right? Because they're the Lions. You almost look at the Patriots game like that. Like if you think, okay, what are quote-unquote the easiest games to win over the back half of the schedule? I think New England makes that list, but you know they go and score 40 or 50 yesterday. Whatever they did to the Jets, and it's Bill Belichick. It's never going to be easy to win that game. And then you get the division games. So you know, looking at the schedule months ago, it felt like the Baltimore back-to-back with the bye sandwich in between was going to be the defining moment of the season. And I still feel like that. But with Cincinnati doing what Cincinnati's done, you cannot discount those matchups. And we'll see the first one in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is, the good news is that offensive line is getting healthy. It looks like you're going to have all 5 of the starters back on the offensive line. Kevin Stefanski talked about how important that is for the Browns.
As you guys know, that offensive line, they play together as one, and when it's you've heard the saying that it's like the fist, right? When they're all together. So you always want that. That's not realistic oftentimes in the National Football League with injuries and guys have to step up. But there is so much communication that occurs, play in and play out along the line. So anytime you can get the 5 in there, I think it's beneficial.
Scott, do you think they just try to out-muscle teams? I mean, this line is good and it's physical. Do they try to turn these into, you know, fist fights in a phone booth, for lack of a better analogy?
Yeah, well, I think especially if Case Keenum's quarterbacking, whether it's Sunday or for how long, I think that is the recipe, right? Don't turn it over, play good defense, run the ball a bunch, and then, you know, move the ball, you know, when you have to through the air, you keep teams off balance with the passing game. I think that makes sense. I think as the weather turns, as you get into the physical AFC North, all of that makes sense. Now, you still have to be explosive, and you have to be explosive in the passing game, especially when you look at what Lamar Jackson can do, and when you look at what Joe Burrow does and did yesterday in Baltimore. You know, it's going to be hard to score as many points as you need just saying, hey, you're going to run it 35 or 40 times a game. But that is the identity, and I think that's where the Browns' strength is compared to everybody else, right? If you especially look at a Cincinnati or whoever, Baltimore, okay, their quarterbacks make big plays. Lamar Jackson can kill you with the running game, but how do the Browns counter that? And the easiest way is with a running game that you can really rely upon.
Does it also put that much more emphasis on this defense figuring it out? And what areas of the defense? I mean, when you look at it, the talent is there. You've seen flashes of it. How do you make sure that the defense does what it needs to do? Or what areas need to get corrected on the defense, I guess?
Yeah, you know what? I would focus on 3 things. I think it starts with the front, right? They got to get the front 4 has to get a lot of pressure without blitzing. And we've seen that at times, right? Throughout the season, we've seen Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney and Malik Jackson and Takk McKinley get pressure without blitzes. And that's step 1. The second step is the safeties have to quit giving up the big plays. And it's not John Johnson III. He gave up the big one to Tyreek Hill in the opener. We got turned around. But that was a physical mistake. It wasn't really a mental mistake. He was in the right spot. But then we saw Grant Delpit once and Ronnie Harrison twice just lose guys, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Williams, and give up easy touchdowns. And you can't have that. And I think that's why you saw Grant Delpit play more against Denver. He took some of Ronnie Harrison's reps away because Harrison had given up a couple of bad touchdowns. So you get that taken care of, cleaned up. And then the third spot is takeaways. And they had one against Denver, right? John Johnson III finally got his first interception with the Browns. You need more of that, especially if you're, you know, I keep coming back to this, but things are different if you don't have your starting quarterback. So if it's Case Keenum, you need to get the offensive ball more. You need to take possessions away from the other offense, and you do that through takeaways, right? They level the playing field or shift the playing field So that's what the defense needs to do.
And you know what? The defense can do that. I mean, that's kind of how this defense is built. You're not asking it to do anything that you didn't plan for it to do.
And how it played last year, right? Early in the year especially, there were a bunch of takeaways. Myles Garrett had 4 strip sacks, I don't know, the first 4 games last year, first 4 or 5 games, and he hasn't had one of those yet. So it feels like it can come, right? Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome are both capable of having interceptions. Miles and Clowney are capable of strip sacks. It just hasn't happened yet.
Scott Petrak, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also read him on brownzone.com. Scott, thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Scott Petrak, again, make sure you read him. On the internet, it's brownzone.com. You can also read him, Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you again tomorrow at 4. Scheduled guests, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for cleveland.com and The Plain Dealer, and Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. That's tomorrow at 4. We will see you then. Have a great night, everybody.